Welcome, everyone. You're watching a channel that has spent years delivering honest, straight-talking analysis of what's happening on the battlefields and in the corridors of world power. Today is a packed day. Events are unfolding simultaneously across multiple fronts, and every one of them deserves a thorough look. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. And make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss a single update. YouTube's algorithms are working against us, and that notification is the only guarantee you'll get fresh content when it drops. I also want to take a moment to thank everyone who supports this channel financially. Guys, you have no idea how much it matters. YouTube is waging an open war against content like ours: demonetization, search suppression, shadow bans. We stay on air purely because of your support. Every contribution, every donation is another episode, another breakdown, another chance to speak freely. Thank you for that. Now, let's get to it. Zaporizhzhia sector. We'll start in the south. The map on the Zaporizhzhia front has seen no corrections today, but that doesn't mean things are quiet. It's more of a build-up phase. Yesterday, Russian units managed to wedge themselves into the defensive seam between the settlements of Huliaipolska, Sharivna, and Novoselivka. This is a textbook maneuver. Find the weak point at the junction of two defensive lines, drive a wedge in, and start prying the flanks apart. Today, Russian forces continue to develop that push, widening the breach and consolidating on the ground already taken. No detailed map corrections yet, but the momentum on this sector is unmistakable. Dobropillia sector, the map of the day. This is where something truly significant is happening today. The Dobropillia sector is producing one of the most substantial map corrections in recent days. Data is converging from multiple directions. Pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian, and neutral observers are all registering the same thing. Prishine has been fully taken under Russian army control. We're talking about the entire perimeter of the settlement, including the last strongpoint in its northwestern corner, the very position that had been holding out until the end. It's over. Objective control footage confirms it. The settlement has been cleared, and the map has been corrected accordingly. But that's not all. Simultaneously, reports are coming in that Russian units have crossed the Druhi Yar ravine and entered the southwestern part of Novoalexandrivka. This is a critical development. The capture of Hryshyn was never the final objective, it was a springboard. The direction of further advance is already becoming clear. Northward, toward Dobropillia itself, and also toward Vasilivka. Russian forces are moving on to the next operational objective and setting new tasks. Slightly to the south, in the Rodinska area, today's correction actually goes the other way in favor of Ukrainian forces. Several pro-Russian analysts, not without some reluctance, acknowledged that Ukrainian units retain control of the slag heap at the Zaporizhzhia mine and still have the ability to move personnel onto the western outskirts of Rodinska. Footage published by the Russian side supports exactly that conclusion. The western part of the settlement remains in VSU hands. On yesterday's version of the map, the Zaporizhzhia mine was marked as being under Ukrainian control, with Russian infiltration zones around the perimeter, meaning Russian units were working around the facility, attempting either to encircle it or create an isolation threat. As of today, the Ukrainian side is still holding the mine and maintaining a foothold on the western edge. A few kilometers further north, Bilitzk. Here the picture is the exact opposite. Reliable pro-Russian sources are reporting full control over the settlement. Looking back at yesterday's map, the majority of Bilitzk was still listed as Ukrainian-held territory. Today, Russian units have pushed out to the northern and northwestern outskirts, and the advance continues toward Cherhivka, Svitla, and Vodyansk, which are essentially the outer suburbs of the Dobropillia agglomeration. The noose is tightening. Constantinovka sector. The supply road is cut. The Constantinovka direction is delivering news today that speaks for itself. The dialogue with the defenders is over. According to reliable pro-Russian analysts, Russian forces have physically cut Highway 00520, the road connecting Constantinovka to Dobropillia. That means one thing: supply to Dobropillia has been severed completely. The lifeline is gone. Let's recall the context. Just days ago, we reported that Russian forces had been methodically dropping leaflets on VSU positions in Dobropillia for an entire week. offering the garrison a chance to surrender or withdraw without a fight. Psychological pressure. An ultimatum on paper. Today, that ultimatum appears to have expired. Cutting the road is the signal. The time for persuasion is over. In the very near term, expect the launch of a full-scale assault on both Dobropillia and the neighboring settlement of Rozkoshne, both located southwest of Constantinovka and now in an extremely vulnerable position. Sloviansk Kramatorsk direction, a bridgehead beyond the canal. From the Kramatorsk direction today come reports that, on closer examination, reveal a very interesting operational picture. According to published materials, Russian units have not merely dug in along the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal. They have crossed it, occupying a number of VSU positions on the opposite bank. The Ukrainian side reacted immediately. Footage was published showing FPV drone operators targeting Russian positions right along the canal, which in itself confirms the crossing. The situation developed gradually over the past several days, with Russian forces steadily closing in on the canal, and today that progression has produced a result. Russian forces are now focused on consolidating a stable bridgehead on the Ukrainian side of the bank. The reason is straightforward. From this position, the shortest route to Kramatorsk opens up, a strike capable of splitting the front into two isolated sectors, Sloviansk, Seversk in the north, and Druzhkivka, Konstantinovka in the south. This isn't speculation, it's what the map is showing. In parallel, new data is coming in on Alexandrivka. Pro-Ukrainian sources report that Russian units have entered the central part of the settlement. Recall that back in April, there were already reports of a push from the northeast. Now a second axis has opened up in the center. The assault is being pressed from two directions, creating the classic precondition for isolating the northeastern quarter. At this rate, the defense of that part of Alexandrivka could collapse within the next few days. Kharkiv region, BOCHKOVE taken, army moves toward the Vovcha. Russia's Ministry of Defense and the northern group of forces have officially confirmed what we were saying just a few days ago. The settlement of BOCHKOVE has come under full Russian army control. The forecast was accurate. The day before yesterday, on April 23rd, two telling videos were released. The first showed Ukrainian drones working against Russian reconnaissance groups moving through BOCHKOVE, which by itself confirmed the presence of Russian infantry in the northern part of the settlement. The second showed Russian aviation striking the crossing over the Vovcha River that connected BOCHKOVE to the main bank. Once that crossing was destroyed and logistics cut off, it was simply a matter of waiting for the official confirmation. And it came. Russian forces are now strengthening their positions along the Vovcha. Fighting will likely continue for the far northeastern corner of the area, after which a broad crossing of the river and a drive deeper into Kharkiv region can be expected. The situation on this axis is taking on an increasingly clear strategic shape. Geopolitics. This is now Europe's war. Now to the big picture, because without it, the full story is incomplete. The authoritative American publication, The Wall Street Journal, is calling things what they are. The conflict in Ukraine has de facto become Europe's war. The reason is simple. The disbursement of a €90 billion loan to Kyiv definitively shifts the financial burden from Washington's shoulders onto European taxpayers. It might seem like the money's been allocated and the matter is settled. But it's not that simple. While negotiations over the package were still ongoing, Ukraine's funding gap grew by another €19 billion. That means within 12 months, Europe will be facing new requests for tens of billions more. This cycle of support has no natural endpoint until a political settlement is reached. An additional headache comes from the protracted negotiations over Ukraine's EU accession. Without a clear timeline or firm guarantees, the process turns into an endless political barter that exhausts both Kiev and Brussels. NATO under strain, Macron versus Turkey. French President Emmanuel Macron has made a statement that in any other era would have triggered a full-blown diplomatic scandal. According to his words, if Turkey were to attack Greece, French armed forces would stand in defense of the Greeks. Bold words, but let's unpack what's really behind them. Three countries, France, Greece and Turkey, are members of the same North Atlantic alliance. Under NATO's founding charter, allies don't attack each other. But the Aegean dispute has long since moved beyond theoretical argument. Greece is pushing to extend its territorial waters to 12 nautical miles. Turkey regards that as a formal casus belli. The Cyprus question has been unresolved since 1974. Energy disputes over the eastern Mediterranean shelf nearly brought the two sides to open confrontation in 2020. And in March 2026, Ankara filed official complaints against Athens over the deployment of military hardware and Patriot air defense systems on the islands of Carpathos and other positions in the Aegean, declaring it a violation of the 1923 Lausanne Treaty and the 1947 Paris Peace Treaty. Macron's statement is not a signal to Greece, it's a signal to Ankara and to the rest of the alliance. France is not going to sit quietly in the face of Turkish provocations. The consequences of such a scenario developing further, the fracture or deep crisis of NATO, are obvious, and clearly Paris understands that perfectly well. The Hormuz crisis, the US and Iran. On the edge of another round, the Middle East keeps producing surprises. The situation around the Strait of Hormuz remains one of the key drivers of global instability. Let's walk through the timeline. In late February, armed conflict broke out between the United States and Iran, triggered by the death of the previous supreme leader of the Islamic Republic in joint Israeli-Iranian strikes. Tehran immediately moved to assert control over the Strait of Hormuz, the strategic choke point through which roughly a quarter of the world's oil and LNG supplies normally flow. On April 8, through Pakistani mediation, the two sides agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. On April 11, the first round of direct talks opened in Islamabad and ran for 21 hours straight. The result? Nothing. Iran refused to make any commitments on its nuclear program. The American side held firm on its conditions. After the talks collapsed, Tehran again closed the Strait of Hormuz, accusing Washington of violating the terms of the agreement, specifically maintaining a naval blockade of Iranian vessels. The United States, in turn, opened fire on an Iranian commercial ship in the Gulf of Oman. Trump publicly threatened to destroy Iran's power plants and bridges. Yet diplomacy, however reluctantly, keeps moving. According to Axios correspondent Barak Ravid, the next round of talks is scheduled for April 27th, Islamabad again. The American delegation will be led by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Iran's side will be represented by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. The key issues on the table: the status of the Strait of Hormuz and the fate of Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile. Former State Department Middle East negotiator Aaron David Miller assessed the situation bluntly. The stronger hand right now belongs to Iran. Tehran controls the geography, has retained significant military capability. According to the New York Times, approximately 40% of its pre-war drone stockpile and half its missile launchers, and is in no hurry to make concessions. If the April 27th talks hit another dead end, the probability of a new escalation spike rises sharply. Meanwhile, Turkey, displaying its characteristic geopolitical agility, is actively pushing the concept of the Middle Corridor, an alternative overland freight route from China to Europe through the Caucasus, bypassing the Strait of Hormuz entirely. The linchpin of the project, informally dubbed the Trump Route, TRIP, is the Zangezur corridor through southern Armenia. Its realization requires opening the Turkish-Armenian border, closed for more than 3 decades, and completing construction of the corridor itself. If operational, the route could cut China to Europe transit time down to 12–15 days. For Ankara, this is a geopolitical and geo-economic jackpot, and Erdogan clearly intends to claim it. Today's picture is composed of several major elements. In eastern Ukraine, steady Russian advances are being recorded across multiple key fronts simultaneously. Hormuz and Bilitzk have been taken. BOCHKOVE has been officially confirmed. The Constantinovka sector has seen a supply route severed, and a bridgehead beyond the canal has been consolidated near Kramatorsk. Geopolitically, Europe is being drawn ever deeper into the Ukrainian conflict, without the resources or the political will to bring it to a close. In the Middle East, the United States and Iran are walking a razor's edge, and the Strait of Hormuz has been turned into a pressure instrument with no equal in global trade. Stay tuned for updates. Tomorrow, new data, new maps, new analysis. To all of you, good health, a clear head, and steady nerves. Until the next episode.